He's a wizard again.
Listen, you two, I know I've asked this before on the Patreon. Okay, patreon.com/butternoparsnips. But
gotta listen.
I'm taking a different angle this time, and I have a question for you both.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What's one small thing people could do to contribute to world peace?
Whoa.
Aww.
Wow.
I'm like thinking like even micro, like just always hold the door, you know?
I mean, let people in when they're trying to merge. Just let them in. They gotta get in at some point. You're gonna get there at the same time.
They do have to get in at some point. In some ways, that's maybe that means maybe that's the spirit. We all gotta get in at some point.
That is the
we gotta get in the spirit of the season.
The spirit of which holiday are we talking about now?
Oh, we'll find out shortly.
Emily,
what was your one small thing?
Oh, I mean, actually, just today, I listened to a service employee getting yelled at by another customer.
Oh.
And when they left, I just had a little conversation with him about how he didn't deserve that. And I was like, I feel like... Yeah. But after it, I wished I had made clear my sympathies during the yelling.
Yeah, that is sometimes the part that actually contributes to world peace.
Yes. So that's what I think we should do.
I had a similar instance a couple weeks ago, and I was so upset that I didn't do something during the moment. So I think that's
we often
gotta take away.
Upset.
It's hard not to be a bystander because you worry that if you intervene, you will escalate it more. Like there is a chance that it will not diffuse. But
I think we should
worse.
always escalate.
Always escalate. Seth's always got guns akimbo.
Guns akimbo. That's my middle name.
Well, hey there. Welcome to Butter No Parsnips. This week on Butter No Parsnips, your hosts Seth Glixman, Emily Moyers, and Kyle Imperator get together for a holly jolly good time with falderall over some funny phonetics. Join them, won't you, as they stuff each other's stockings with etymological expertise.
Welcome, one and all, to the longest episode of Butter No Parsnips ever.
It's a holiday special. They're allowed to be long.
It is.
Seth is Benjamin buttoning it, starting it old. He's going to end it young.
I am the recently unchained Seth Glixman, here with Emeliezer Scrooge Moyers. And corpuscular Kyle Imperator, the infirmed little boy who dies at the end.
I don't think that was his name in the book.
I think that was what it was. And it looks like you two have gotten into the chump spirit, letting old scraggly Seth out of his dungeon in the spirit of the season.
Once a year.
We gotta celebrate Chump.
It is nice. I do have to take this off. It is getting all in my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, the mustache is below your chin anyway.
Yeah, and only people on YouTube know what I'm talking about.
You gotta be watching.
Well, me here at the Lexiconicon wants to wish you all a cheery chump. Cheery chump. And don't worry, if this is your first chump, that's spelled C-H-U-M-P, not what I understand it might sound like. If this is your first chump, and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to lose the theme real fast. You could go back and listen to episode 72 for some unnecessary context, but boy, oh boy, do we have some things to get into today.
I love it's just like, hey guys, if you don't know Chump, get with the times.
Figure it out. Gang, it's been a while since we've peered upon the peccable pages of the Lexiconicon.
It's true.
It's true.
It's true.
Do we have any new lore to drop?
I mean, it's been so long. I don't even know anymore if we revere this book as some sort of evil to be reckoned with or as some kind of Kimmy Gibbler style walk-on roll in our everyday lives.
It is what it has become.
I mean, I would say that she has this sort of evil energy to her.
Absolutely.
In the eyes of Danny Tanner, for sure.
I think she was the antagonist of Full House.
Yeah, of the greater plot.
But listen, I'm going to be honest with both of you. We're not going to clear that ambiguity up today.
No, we never will.
Nor do we ask for it.
Nor did Kimmy Gibbler.
No. Now, do you smell that? The fire breath of the chump chump singeing the hairs on the back of your neck? Or am I having a stroke?
I think both.
I mean,
Probably.
he has singed your foreheads, your eyebrows
They
into
always look like this.
just plates.
It looks like they're made of nickel. I'm sorry. I'm just staring
Yeah,
at
they
them.
do.
What?
They look like sheer.
Yeah,
like-
they look like
It doesn't look like hair.
I don't know why
like
you two are acting like
pounded
this.
metal.
I mean, we always comment on how
That's
ugly
true.
your real eyebrows are.
Every time we hang out, it is just a constant roast sesh of my eyebrows. My perfectly trimmed, totally symmetrical, definitely real eyebrows.
Yeah.
By the way, on this special Chump episode, underwritten by the Lexiconicon per a brief possession by the book whereby I was overcome with a word, I'm going to open up your worlds and your wounds for a very long time. For today, I'm going to embrace the tradition of holiday storytelling. I'm going to present you both with a word from a very unique chapter of the Lexiconicon. One where it seems the previous reader didn't really get what highlighters were for and seemed to highlight everything but the articles of speech. And it's like, did that help you remember anything, or are you just sort of performing academia, you know? Crepuscular Kyle, Ebenezer Scrooge, get in your jammies, gather near the fire. For today, I have a story to tell. Your word today is Decalog. And I'm not going to spell it for you, with good reason, which I'll tell you later. But right now, just on what you can parse out from the sounds, what do you think Decalog means?
I mean, I feel like it means a chronicle of 10 years.
Oh, see,
Interesting.
I was thinking a conversation between 10 people.
Really? That's very fun.
We both went logically, but with different.
I would say Kyle
portmanteaus.
is closer in that he's using a piece of the word a little more akin to what it would be applied to.
The log part.
The
I'm
log
guessing.
part.
L-O-G-U-E.
But not the right definition of that root
Mhm.
you're using. You're using a different definition of the same root.
I see.
A word that is 10 letters?
No, but that's pretty good. I would think that would probably be a decagram or a decograph.
Decagram, that's the amount of medicine that I take every morning.
Medicine, he calls it.
Decagram's worth. Yeah, my medicine. It's to keep me
Straight
crepuscular.
opium.
Okay, Decalog. Oh, is it just like a series of 10 books? Like a
Not
trilogy, a decalogy?
not books, but maybe consider things we might need a word to describe in a set of 10. A very specific set of 10.
Teeth? You only got 10 of those.
But we have no word to describe a full mouth of teeth.
Yeah.
Just the top half.
Omnipotent.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, that's our time.
Something very specific that
yeah,
comes
like
in
what-
10.
Yes. There's only 10 of these things.
Oh, the commandments.
Kyle, you got it.
Wow, Kyle's so smart.
Seth not dressed as himself, he's dressed as Moses.
That's correct. Moses was known for this hat.
That's probably the most famous thing about him.
Yep. So, Decalogue is brought to English as a borrowing from the Middle French decalogue, but before that, it was the Latin decalogus, which came from the Greek dekalogos. So it's been pretty consistent even since its first recorded use in English in 1382 per the OED. But I think with this next part, I'm realizing that the Lexiconicon must be some kind of evil. Because I'm like figuring it out, and every time we have a Lexiconicon episode, it seems like there's some sort of twist. That's right. Not all is as it seems on this chump registered property of the Lexiconicon Special. Because yes, it is in fact a word meaning the 10 Commandments collectively as a body of law, but that bears no consequence at all. You're the chumps on this, the chumpiest of chumps. Is that a compliment, an insult? I don't know. I don't know. We're not going to find out.
Listeners, you don't need to know what chump is.
It's not
at all
to this episode or life.
This next question, though, does bear consequence, however. How would you spell Decalog?
I mean, I will say I had a pretty clear spelling in my head. I'm now full of doubt, but at the risk of getting the QI klaxon, I'll just say what I think it is. I think it's Decalogue.
Interesting. And
or I guess just LOG, maybe like a catalog discrepancy.
Interesting. Discrepancy. Kyle, how would you spell it?
DEHKKAHLAWGG.
Spells it like a white mom naming her child.
For everybody listening, we are selling Kyle off for literally a donated sum,
any
a
price.
Recommended amount, like a museum, any price you want to give. Well, Emily, you're onto something. Because you could spell it DECALOGUE, like dialogue or epilogue. But that's stupid, right? Right, Emily? This is me,
absolutely.
Cool Seth, telling you don't need to spell right to live right. The only real cop is in your brain. Now quick, smoke this marijuana cigarette before Principal McNally comes in.
McNally!
I love this episode of Jump Street.
We go to Catholic school. Seriously, though, you stop saying Decalogue 2 letters before you're finished reading it.
It's
What's
true.
up with that? Why make read so hard? Me want easy.
Yeah.
Which is why, Kyle, you can also spell it DECALOG, right? Like analog or catalog. Interestingly, though, those exemplar words I mentioned in both instances could acceptably be spelled the other way. So dialogue can drop the UE and catalog can add them.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Guys, that is. Tell me why that's interesting alone. Tell me why that's so interesting.
Like individual, like we have to move into different rooms.
We're going to do breakout rooms real fast. I'm going to jump in, see how you're doing, how you're working on things. And
we go in breakout rooms, but with no one to talk to. We just sit in an empty room.
I would like you to be twiddling your thumbs when I get in.
I mean, like obviously, like one version came from French and one version came from, I guess, just older English or Germanic is my guess.
Or Latin, maybe.
Or Latin, yeah.
Or
Latin.
Latin.
But I like that because I feel like there's a lot of English words that just have more letters than they should.
So many.
Macabre is disgusting.
What?
Macabre. It has an R-E on the end. Why?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's my favorite type of parrot.
Kyle's making a macaw joke.
Oh, a macaw. Kyle is full of macaw jokes. Could you do one more macaw joke for everybody?
I could. Rio, more like P-U-O. That movie stunk.
He is on an island and we must keep him there. We cannot let him back into main society. Well, you two, to discover why it's truly interesting, we have to go back a ways. To a time before things were interesting. That's right. We have to go back to 1350 CE, right on the precipice of interesting. Is that year significant to either of you, Kyle? Any anniversaries?
Yeah.
I mean, it is his birthday.
I had biscuits and gravy for the first time.
In the year 1350.
And it was the year I was born, so it was,
big
that
year.
was his
big,
first
huge
meal.
Year. Yeah, didn't even realize when I wrote this question. I didn't even realize.
Did something happen that year, Seth?
Emily, something did happen. The book.
The printing press. Is that 1350?
No.
Oh, it was 1400? 1450?
We both said, Kyle, you fucking idiot.
Go back to your biscuits and gravy answer. That was funny. It's said, you two, that 1350 is about the time that the Great Vowel Shift began.
Oh.
Now, if you've never heard of the Great Vowel Shift, first of all, offended. We've brought it up a couple times on the show now. I'll be honest, it's complicated. The linguistic implications of the Great Vowel Shift are above my pay grade. The historical implications are right where I'm at, though.
We pay you?
I pay me. Essentially, this was a period of about 200 years where English vowel pronunciations just started switching up. Now, you have talked about it on the show, so maybe you can help me out. Give me a little more context here.
Yeah, it's sort of like the linguists map out vowels in like a chart of like where they sit in your like throat and mouth, and like truly it's like they all just shifted one spot during the Great Vowel Shift. They all like, I think they all moved up. They all got like tighter.
Yeah, they tightened it up. Yes. Words like beat started being pronounced bite, and then we started getting diphthongs, which is the pronunciation of two vowels as one syllable, like in day. You have that slide from A to Y, day. But we can't really figure out a singular reason as to why it happened. There was migration following the Black Death. There was the end of Norman French rule in England. There is even the belief that general anti-French sentiment among the English led to what were essentially like linguistic revolts, which led to hypercorrection by the English to detach themselves from the French language, which, hey, I get it. Between the French and the English, pick your poison, am I right?
You know what I learned recently? The British like celebrate a holiday for when they kicked the Norman French out like 1,000 years ago. They're still partying about it.
That feels appropriate. That feels right. For how consequential that move was, like it feels correct that they would celebrate that.
I guess so.
And it's so long ago that like, what do they even do? I bet it has nothing to do with it.
It's like a big parade or whatever. And it's just like, it was 900 years ago. Relax.
You're not them. You didn't do this.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, they're not them anymore, you know? Like, your relations with the French are so complex at this point. Why? Like, you can't even
back then, they were so simple. So simple back then.
It wasn't even interesting at that time.
That's
no, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Nevertheless, things started sounding differently and strangely for 200 years. Imagine going through 200 years of puberty and trying to convince people that it was just a phase for the next 400. It's not going to be easy, especially so when some schmuck named Johannes Gutenberg shows up in the middle of it all and starts recording everything. Because as the shift started taking place in 1350, the printing press, Kyle, was invented in 1440. It's like the English language walked into school with the biggest zit on its forehead, and Gutenberg was picture day.
Yeah. It was like, oh, we're changing the way we pronounce everything? Now seems like a good time to settle on spellings.
So what winds up happening is that print starts reflecting English before and as the Great Vowel Shift is happening. But remember, Gutenberg isn't an English name, and he himself was not English, so he was not printing in English. In fact, the person responsible for first introducing the printing press to England was English diplomat William Caxton in 1476. He had been living in Belgium when he started in the printing trade, so when he came back to England, he brought a bunch of guys with him from his shop who didn't know English. And these were the guys who determined what was getting printed in English.
Really good. Really good. Love this.
Now, I don't think people really think about this. Like, I think we take it for granted that if I go to one publisher versus another, the biggest difference I might find between the two shops is their inclusion of the Oxford comma, which I'll be damned if blood won't be spilled over.
But that's the other half of the day celebrating this separation between England and France. So over the Oxford comma.
Yes. It's a real day of English culture there. But what ends up being the case for literally hundreds of years is print shops, the people responsible for actually typesetting what people are going to have to be able to read, start developing standards per shop in what were called house styles. And we're talking people at the forefront of mass-produced text. Caxton is literally responsible for the first English publication of Aesop's Fables. Imagine English society when that friggin' book hit the shelves. You're telling me this tortoise wins?
Everyone learned to be moral for the first time.
Wow, if animals can do it.
Oh my God. I am staring at my reflection too much.
I literally couldn't think of any other fable other than the tortoise and the hare, which I'm not even sure is canon.
I know. I think that is Aesop.
I talked about the fox and the grapes in one episode.
Oh yeah,
that's
the fox
an
and the
Aesop
grapes.
fable.
That's Aesop.
Now, for this reason, Caxton is among the cohort of early printers responsible for the chaos of the English language. They drew from multiple English dialects to sort of find a happy, mushed-up English everyone would hopefully understand. Oh. But remember, the vowel shift is just gearing up, and these poor guys are trying to figure out an English that works for everyone, while everyone is literally actively changing English. But that's not to say that people weren't trying to do something about it. In fact, in 1569, an educator named John Hart was responsible for what's considered the first truly phonological scheme, which I believe is also what our parents called the Hooked on Phonics commercials.
Kyle, we're going to get you on the first truly phonological scheme.
Now, if you give us 3 vowels today, we'll give you 5 vowels down the line.
Dad,
you can't beat that, folks.
This sounds like a pyramid scheme. It is, and you'll love it.
This and zoo books.
And Muzzy.
Oh, Kyle's going to cry.
R.I.P. Muzzy.
One of the big issues with spelling was that there existed a gap between spoken English and written English. And while that's still the case today, it was even more so then. Editors and typesetters in these print shops would basically decide how they were going to phoneticize some words. John Hart hated that. Like, really hated that. Like he said, English was full of, quote, vices and corruptions, and, quote, evil to read. Which, believe me when I tell you, 2nd grade Seth couldn't agree more.
You were reading John Hart back then, right?
Yes, I was radicalized. I was radicalized by John Hart. So what do you two think John Hart did?
About this?
Yeah.
Became a serial killer?
Well, that's typically the path. Yeah, that I get where you're thinking there. That was where I was in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
But like linguistically. For that reason.
Did he write it like a phonetic alphabet or something like that?
Well,
the IPA?
Tickle my belly and call me Nancy. No, he didn't do the IPA, but he did invent his own alphabet, Kyle. He basically wanted to close that spoken to written gap. So in his orthography, spelled I-E, funny enough, orthography meaning the conventional spelling system of a language, he made up new symbols to more closely attach to our phonetic pronunciations, which are very fun. Emily, they literally look like those letters that you invented for that D&D game that you did. They're like loopy and swoopy and they don't look like real letters at all. Yeah. He invented 6 new consonant letters with the intention of getting rid of confusions like the soft G or the voiced the versus the unvoiced the, as Jean Berko Gleason referred to in episode 89 WUG. And then he also introduced diacritical remarks for the discrimination between long and short vowels. Diacritical remarks for the uninitiated are the little add-ons you might see in foreign alphabets, like the umlaut or the tilde. Unfortunately, the Great Vowel Shift was still happening in 1569, so his phonetics were more of a snapshot of his own temporally local English than the English that would eventually survive the shift.
He's way ahead of his time.
He wasn't the only one to be doing it. There was a bunch of other folks who proposed a bunch of other ways of phoneticizing English. This was a big thing back then. People were really trying to figure it out. It's just a shame that we were also just passively figuring it out in spoken words, you know?
Yeah.
But then one day, Richard Mulcaster, a well-to-do educator and school headmaster in London, was like, what are we doing here? And he published The Elementary, also, for some reason, spelled with an I-E at the end.
That's just how they spelled things back then.
It's just crazy when you consider that they are trying to help phoneticize the English language.
And we need 2 letters for this. It makes 1 sound, 2 letters.
Now, this was in 1582, getting a little closer to the end of the vowel shift. The Elementary was like a love letter, not only to the English language, but to the learning of the English language. And what's more, to the idea of the English language as the language of learning. Like Emily, you'd mentioned in episode 101 Stochastic the idea that German had pervaded academic spaces in the early 1900s. Mulcaster was suggesting the same thing for English in the 1500s.
It didn't seem to catch.
No. And
we didn't learn anything.
Yes. No, we didn't. But for it to be that, you needed to be able to have a command of the language. And thus, the book reads like a curriculum and is ended with a list of 8,000 common words. Not as a dictionary, though, but instead as an attempt to establish a standard spelling of those 8,000 common words. Sure. There's no definitions. As I've been outlining, Mulcaster was familiar with the fact that English spelling was, quote, without any certain direction. To highlight this, it's worth mentioning that from 1598 to 1636 alone, the word for coffee could be found spelled CHAOUA, CAHVE, CAHU, CAPHA, CAFFA, or even CAUPHE. And that's in chronological order those are found.
Oh my God.
So the argument that maybe there should be some universal understanding of how to spell words is like pretty valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even understand what CAHU is supposed to signal to a reader.
CAHU,
Kahoofy.
Kahoofy. I like that. That's the goofy laugh being
or like one of the drunk geese in Aristocats.
No matter what, it's Disney though, folks. No matter what. No matter
what. It comes
what.
back to it's Disney all the way down. It's tortoises, hares, and Disney all the way down.
Mulcaster even makes a call to action in his book to any budding lexicographer to go and make the first English dictionary, claiming it would be, quote, unto us therein both English words' natural force and their proper use. Which is like such a teacher thing to do, isn't it?
He was like halfway there though. He wrote the words, just say what the words mean.
He could have, but they were common words.
Just a quick 8,000 word dictionary. It would have taken him a flash.
But if the spelling wasn't standardized, then some people could be reading it and be like, I don't know what this says.
Sure.
That's fair.
Especially if it's CAHUPHE.
CHA ampersand 99 hyphen.
Semicolon dash.
His full name.
Dolphin sounds in brackets.
A big ink blot somehow printed.
Oops, that's a mistake. Don't worry about that.
Why?
FEE.
Thin.
Period.
Or is it?
I don't know who this Mulcaster guy is, but I like his style. Well, dictionaries, it should be said, haven't always been around. In English, that is. In fact, dictionaries have been around for a very long time, but the first was actually written in Sumerian cuneiform in 2300 BCE.
Wow, I did not know that.
And considering that, you actually have to wonder what the hell English speakers were doing that the first English dictionary wasn't published until 1604.
I can tell you what it was. How much of a nerd does that make me?
The cuneiform dictionary?
No, the English one.
God.
Emily's read it. Cover to cover.
Well, I think...
Or skin flap to skin flap.
Well, hopefully we'll be on the right page then, Emily, because with only 2,543 words across 120 pages, Robert Caudry's A Table Alphabetical? Oh.
Emily knows every word.
And syllable separately unto itself.
Yep.
Now, the table alphabetical is minuscule when compared to today's Merriam-Webster's dictionary at over 75,000 definitions across 960 pages. And while in 1604 it was the first English dictionary, it seems that even 150 years after its publication, with several dictionaries published in the meanwhile, Philip Stanhope, the 4th Earl of Chesterfield, was just as upset as I was, learning that this was as far as we had gotten in the dictionary business, when he said it was, quote, A sort of disgrace to our nation, that hitherto we have had no standard of our language, our dictionaries at present being more properly what our neighbors call theirs, word books, than dictionaries in the superior sense of that title. Basically saying, I get that we call these dictionaries, but you guys know they're not really dictionaries, right?
I mean, everybody in England at that time decided they didn't want to know French because they hated the French so much, so they have no idea what they're up to. There's no comparison.
Don't even show me their words. And this was a criticism of the fact that the table alphabetical was unreliable. Thomas Blount's pursuant 1656 dictionary, Glossographia, was considered more of a hard word book. And 1658's The New World of English Words by Edward Phillips was basically just a plagiarization of Glossographia.
Yep.
There were dozens of these sort of kind of dictionaries published. They were the sort of kind of dictionaries that people like us love to pull words from. See episode 24, Eurythmic, episode 28, Apricity, and episode 75, Syzygy. And I'm sure even more than that, which are all or stem from words found in these sort of kind of dictionaries.
I specifically have a list of words that I use that are from the New World of Words.
Kyle, go back a step. You can just use Glossographia, the original word.
Really? Probably get better results.
I like the idea that maybe some of the words aren't good, like are inaccurate, you know? It's like, oh, there's like kind of a detective element in it.
What's Kirky? Oh, it's just a weird spelling of cookie.
Kirky, the thing I like to eat.
Oh, this is written by little Jimmy from the 4th grade in West Elm Elementary in Des Moines. But good news for the Earl of Chesterfield was on the way, because can either of you tell me what year it was 150 years after 1604? Quick math.
1754. Just before Samuel Johnson?
Oh, that's
1755?
right. 1754, 1 year before Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language. Kyle, you have got to get going here. You are not catching up. Emily's beating you to every dictionary fact.
The only dictionary that I've read is the picture ones.
And they're pop-ups at that.
Yeah,
12 words.
I should say I've been ghostwriting all of Kyle's episodes.
That'd be cool. I'd love to find that out. Now, hailed generally as the first modern English...
What?
I would love to find out that Kyle is useless.
Get rid of that redundancy real quick. Yes! We're getting rid of Kyle, folks! Cheery Chump Tall! Told you he dies at the end.
No, we love Kyle.
We love Kyle.
I feel like we'd make this joke too much. Kyle, you're a treasured part of this podcast.
You're a treasured part of this podcast who plays the role of the one who dies at the end. And you have to commit to the role. You have to.
You became Voldemort at the end of that.
The boy who lives. The boy. Now, hailed generally as the first modern English dictionary, we
gotta reset, like, emotionally.
We can look at Johnson's dictionary the same way we look at Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Same way.
We
Same
can.
way.
We
as
can.
in it was parodied by Weird Al.
You might think it was the original, but it's a cover. And just like Robert Hazard's 1979 original, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, those initial dictionaries had all the right pieces. They just didn't put them together the right way like Samuel Johnson did, or Cyndi Lauper, for the sake of this analogy. Funny enough, that same Earl would claim to be a patron of Johnson's efforts. However, Johnson himself would later complain directly to him that he had, quote, waited in his outward rooms and was repulsed from his door and had brought the dictionary at last to the verge of publication without one act of assistance, one word of encouragement, or one smile of favor. So in other words, the Earl would have chosen the free option on Patreon.
Yeah.
What is this guy?
I don't know. Got a lot of opinions, but doesn't want to do something about it.
Too much of that in the world today.
Too much of it.
God.
Let people merge. Nevertheless, Johnson persisted. And while Johnson's feat is, of course, monumental, all we really need to take away from this moment is the fact that the English language finally had an authoritative work. At over 43,000 entries, we had a true dictionary that was arranged alphabetically, that cited use cases to elaborate meaning, and that outlined etymologies. And it's actually etymology that will be our first bite into the meat and potatoes of the story I'm telling you today. See,
finally getting to dinner.
40 minutes in.
Yahoo! See, etymology back then was really just a crapshoot. So when Johnson was going through the etymologies, he would just sort of lean toward Greek or Latin roots, which results in crazy discrepancies, like receipt with a P, but deceit without one. Or this, which I did not put together until I researched this episode. But did you know that disdain, D-I-S-D-A-I-N, is the opposite of Dane, D-E-I-G-N?
No, I did not know that.
Same root there. He just took two different approaches.
That's crazy. Wait, so
like
before him it wasn't standardized that way? He was the one who standardized it?
Well, he is the one who's establishing, and he decided that when he put his dictionary together, he would spell one that way and spell one the other way. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And it wasn't long. And I mean really not long at all, maybe about 13 years, that People magazine's sexiest man of the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin, decided to weigh in. That's a made-up fact. People magazine didn't exist back then, but boy, if it did. Now, there's a lot to know about Benjamin Franklin. Like, so much.
And so much that Seth already knows, by the way.
So much that if there wasn't such an extensive record of his existence, I'd sort of be like, okay, come on, guys. Is this like a Socrates situation? But apparently,
it's just a bunch of people.
Against all odds, he's real, and he did a lot of stuff. But it turns out that alongside electricity and making the turkey the national bird, Benjamin Franklin, a contemporary and acquaintance of Samuel Johnson's, would also make spelling reform one of his pet projects, when in 1768, he presented a new alphabet to a colleague. Again, Franklin was pointing out unnecessary discrepancies in the spelling of English words versus their pronunciation. And so in this scheme for a new alphabet and reformed mode of spelling, he proposes removing letters C, J, Q, W, X, and Y, and replacing them with fun, new letters.
Oh, just not even... Wow, okay. So instead of simplifying it by removing the letters, he's simplifying it by making us learn new things.
Yeah, he's complexifying it by saying, throw out what weird crap you already know. Let me fill it with new weird nonsense.
Sometimes you need to unlearn and relearn more to know less.
Thank you, Zoolander.
It's like if Apple one day was like, apps, they're a thing of the past. Instead, now you're going to use bottles.
That's so true. No, he's right. He's right. Everyone at home, shut up. If you're in your car driving and you said, what the hell is he talking about? You shut up.
Never insult me or my son ever again.
Didn't you hear us when we said he is an integral part of this triad? These new letters accounted for differences in vowel pronunciation, with doubled vowels making these sounds go from short to long. One letter, the ing, accounting for exactly that sound, would eventually be incorporated into the International Phonetic Alphabet over 100 years later.
I know that one.
Yeah.
It's just like an N with a J on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He didn't invent it, nor was he the first to advocate for its incorporation into an alphabet, though. That's just important.
But he was the most Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, he was absolutely the most part. Benjamin Franklin about it.
Yeah.
And they said that.
And what that means, you have to look into all of his...
all of it.
Yeah.
All of it to know.
Now, this wouldn't actually be published until 1779 because printers didn't have the ability to print Franklin's fun new letters, 4 of which, representing the sounds h, sh, the, and th, were actually just H's with different little swoops around the edges.
Oh, okay.
Even then, Franklin didn't really do much with it after its publication, moving on likely to larger matters of the state at the time, like secret sex parties, I think. Listen to episode 12 of our Patreon podcast, Buttered Parsnips, Epic Names Part 1 for more on that.
Secret sex parties?
Yeah, Duke or Earl of Sandwich.
Oh,
Hellfire Club.
I thought we talked about it with Franklin. We didn't.
But I've got a question for you two. How many people do you know who've written foundational dictionaries, like personally?
4.
Name them right now.
Kevin, Stephen.
All first names.
Devin.
Or is that his full name? Kevin Stephen Devin?
Yeah, that's 1. 2 is Marjorie Butter.
This is good. Yes.
3 is
Marjorie Butter's cooking dictionary.
Yeah, the cooking dictionary. 3 is Mr. Peevish, and 4 is dictionary.com. The man.
The man, dictionary.com. I do miss him so. Well, Benjamin Franklin knew at least 2.
Oh.
And while his relationship with the prescriptivist Samuel Johnson was a passing one, this later friend was one with whom Franklin is said to have painted the town red when Franklin was 80 and this individual 28. Do you have any guesses as to who this might be?
Noah Webster?
Wow!
Oh,
Emily knows Noah Webster's age by heart.
Facts.
Wow. Yes, it's none other than the namesake of the very dictionary I mentioned earlier, Noah Webster. Webster was 2 things that cause his name to be among the most important in this episode: an educator and staunchly American. And while in this political climate, that would typically be a little bit of an ick for me, Webster's nationalism was at the very birth of the nation. That doesn't sound good either. Okay, let's see what the fascists haven't taken from us. All I'm saying is that he really believed in the America that signed its constitution when he was 27 years old.
Pretty good.
And what's more is that he effing hated Europe. Hated their aristocracy, hated their hierarchy, hated their government, hated their religiosity, and truly wanted America to form its own antithetical national identity. And so what do people do when they want to pave the way for a bold new national future?
They make a dictionary.
You got it. And at least so far as Ben Franklin goes, we can sort of say there's a precedent for that line of thought. Like, kind of. But he has grounds to stand on. Again, he was an educator, and he spent years teaching in schools that were underfunded, overcrowded, and taught out of, get ready for this, European textbooks. And considering his ferocious nationalism, this could not stand. And so he set out to write a Grammatical Institute of the English Language, which included a speller, a grammar, and a reader, published in 1783, 84, and 85, respectively. Oh. Now, going backwards, the reader was an attempt in so many ways to ingrain the American spirit into the students' learning. Alongside the likes of Shakespeare, it included works by American authors and poets that incorporated American patriotism and values. Works like Thomas Paine's The Crisis, which was a pamphlet of morale boosters for revolting Americans, and Thomas Day's essays on favoring abolition, which, let's just say, give it up for an old white guy we bring up on this podcast that we can rest assured was on the right side of that argument. I'm looking at you, Kyle.
Oh, I don't know if you can rest assured about me, but Noah Webster, that's good.
One of the more interesting inclusions, in my opinion, was what I could not avoid seeing referred to as 2 original fan fictions based on Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Emile or On Education. It seems everybody likes to refer to them as fan fictions, and I guess in some ways they are, because they incorporate work from this Jean-Jacques Rousseau piece. The original work was supposed to be a remark on like the nature of mankind's innate goodness in a corrupt society, and Webster's 2 stories, titled Emilius or Domestic Happiness and Emilia or The Happiness of Retirement, incorporated elements introduced in Rousseau's work to highlight the importance of not just joy, but also education for women, which again, let's just say, give it up for an old white guy on this podcast that we can rest assured was on the right side of that argument. Again, Kyle, looking at you.
Listen, you know, being fanfics, I assume that they also incorporated vampires and homoerotic.
Oh yeah, they were slash fictions. Yes.
And they did have like a disclaimer at the top that was like, I didn't write this original work. Don't come at me. Hey guys, I spent a lot of time on that website. It just takes place
in the Rousseau-verse, okay?
Meanwhile, the grammar and the speller were fierce rejections of those things which made our English British. Webster taught the spelling of words like color and labor without the U. He put the E and the R in the right order in words like meter and theater. Yeah, Kyle. He even removed those double consonants we mentioned in episode 98 with Ellen Joven, like in traveling or labeling. And of course, finally, my friends, he removed the UE from words like catalog and dialogue.
And it's Decalog.
That's what this episode's about. It's about Decalog.
Now hang on. Hang on.
Wake up, sleeping listeners.
Hold on, because you're not right.
What? It's not about that
never mind.
word?
Go back to sleep. He's not
Go back
going to
to
talk
bed.
about Decalog
If you're driving
yet.
right now, go back to sleep.
You've got another 10 minutes.
It's for this reason that Noah Webster would go on to become known as the father of American English. The Grammatical Institute would be used in classrooms for at least the next 100 years. And there's plenty more reasons than just the fact that it was decidedly American in virtue. The Grammatical Institute was also among the first to consider the idea that children learn at developmental stages, making it particularly useful to teachers. So the consideration for the learner, both in practice and in principle, resulted in a remarkably pedagogical book. One which would actually be the inspiration for the idea of spelling bees.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
So that's an American thing, spelling bees?
yeah, like this dictionary triggered the idea of learning established spellings.
Wow. This book is the reason Keke Palmer is famous.
Wow, that's like that meme with the domino, the little domino, the giant domino. The little domino is Samuel Johnson's, and the big domino is Keke Palmer's fame.
Keke Palmer's Old Navy commercials.
I just want to say now I feel emboldened that Butter No Parsnips can just write our own mini dictionary and sell it to Linda McMahon to
And we could have
disseminate to schools.
astronomical impacts down the
We
line.
could
Who knows?
be the next Samuel Johnson. Is that who
We
wanna
can't be the next Noah Webster.
Oh yeah, that's who we'd be in right now. I just, why?
Wow.
I guess I wanted to be somebody else, you know?
You started old and I thought we were going to Benjamin Button, but you're just getting older.
No!
That's a Benjamin Button movie I want to see, where he's born old and just gets older.
And people are like, nah, he'll get younger. And he's like, what's happening?
It's just an incredibly sad 90 minutes. That's it. There's no arc. It just gets sadder.
Yep.
So generation after generation in the United States were being brought up learning English the American way. Mind you, however, Webster wouldn't publish an actual dictionary until 1806. Although the first endeavor had a few measly 5,000 words, over the next 22 years, Webster would work to compile a dictionary of 70,000 entries, and at the age of 70, in 1826, would publish the American Dictionary of the English Language, the forefather of the Merriam-Webster dictionary we know today. And Webster would incorporate all those spellings of his previous work into this dictionary, rendering this dictionary decidedly American and causing some to call him radical and vulgar and, my favorite, too inclusive, which, is always a criticism you expect from great people. But it was Webster's dictionary in conjunction with the Grammatical Institute which formed the foundation of the American English you and I are speaking and spelling today. And if you think that's where this ends, you'd be wrong, because Decalog, believe it or not, isn't spelled without the UE in the first edition of Webster's dictionary. So what happened? Well, if I haven't made it abundantly clear here, people have been trying to iron out all the confusing stuff in English for ages. And that didn't just stop with Webster, as much as his critics probably wished it would have. In fact, it started getting serious. Really serious.
Didn't, Teddy Roosevelt
Hang on, Kyle. So serious, in fact, that 50 years following the publishing of Webster's dictionary in 1876, Philadelphia was host to the International Convention for the Amendment of English Orthography. The opening address for the convention put it best. Our woes sprung from the Norman conquest. And in this way, they were correct. And summarizing what we've established here today, they went on to say, before our scholars waked up, the whole habit of writing was so far away from the phonetic one the people ceased to feel any necessity for keeping sounds and signs together, and the scholars gave up. And it's from this convention that sprung any number of association or society or group dedicated to spelling reform. The American Philological Society set forth reform spellings immediately of words with silent E's like live, give, or even are, all removing that final E. Newspapers pursued reforms of their own, especially that of the Chicago Tribune, whose editor and owner was on the council of the Spelling Reform Association. And then, in 1898, the American National Education Association adopted its own list of preferred spelling to be used in all writing. Weirdly, the list included only 12 words. Though and although, ending in THO. Thorough and thoroughfare, simplifying the OUGH to an O. Through and throughout, spelled THRU. Program, spelled without the ME at the end. And finally, catalog, demagogue, pedagogue, prologue, and decalogue, all without the UE.
Decalogue is such a specific word to include in the list of 12
Isn't
words.
that like a bizarre selection of words for the National Education Association?
That's insane. And half of them, it's like we only needed one of these to demonstrate how you were changing them.
Kyle, you think, like, Decalogue is a weird one, but also so is demagogue and
thoroughfare.
Like, I just can't understand. I tried to figure out, like, why these were their selections, and I didn't get to the bottom of it. But it's just a strange, just excerpt of the English language. Like, you know what? We're just going to show that we're making a stand, but it's probably going to be inconsequential in the end.
I like how there's a direct correlation between reforming the English language and drive-through.
Yes.
Fast food.
Absolutely. I agree 100. Like, I love that seeing drive-through in a McDonald's drive-through. It's like, wow, hundreds of years ago we decided that would be the case.
But it only works for fast food.
Yes. Well, I was thinking, as you were going down that list, really the only one that, like, America has, like, accepted as correct proper English is the program without the ME.
Sure.
I feel like all the rest of those we would call, like, slang or abbreviation.
It's very true, Emily. And I'll capitalize on that by saying it still doesn't end here. No. And do you know why? Because of one of the 20th century's most visionary and money-having men. Yes, and what's probably an exquisite indictment of the gap between intelligence and wealth. Elon Musk, Donald Trump. One Mr. Andrew Carnegie was a notoriously bad speller.
Wow. Seth, you have to be very careful because Kyle and I are both librarians, and Andrew Carnegie is like a god in the library world.
Oh, no, and he should be, I think. I don't know. Yeah. He seems to have done a lot of good things.
He funded a bajillion of them.
Yeah, and that makes sense. The guy couldn't read. And in what is likely one of the healthier projections of his insecurities, he put forth $250,000, roughly $9 million today, to support the establishment of the Simplified Spelling Board in 1906. Carnegie felt, at least outwardly, that by simplifying English, we stood to gain a new world language which anyone could learn, and thus we stood to gain one step toward world peace. For more on this idea, listen to episode 16 of our Patreon, all about L.L. Zamenhof, the inventor of Esperanto. And man, was this board a real who's who of the early 1900s. It included the likes of a Supreme Court justice, the president of Columbia University, a former U.S. Treasury Secretary, and the editor-in-chief for Webster's 1909 New International Dictionary, who is also the current U.S. Commissioner of Education. And those are just the people you wouldn't know the names of.
He's currently the U.S. Commissioner of Education?
He was the current U.S. Commissioner.
I knew we had an aging political framework.
Who's our current Commissioner of Education?
Current Commissioner of Education?
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon.
It's a shame he's right. And those are the people whose names you wouldn't know. Also on this board sat author Mark Twain, and the inventor of the Dewey Decimal System, Melville Dewey.
Wow.
Even James Murray, the editor of the Oxford English Dictionary, would eventually join the board, and that was after some attacks on the board for being a little too liberal. Twain had actually written an essay himself in 1899 titled A Plan for the Improvement of English Spelling. whereby the essay progressively abides by the reforms he's introducing. The last sentence is not only a blast to look at, but hilariously incredibly difficult to read without reading the preceding explanation. And in the same year as the establishment of the Simplified Spelling Board, 1906, they would release a list of 300 words to adopt new spellings. This list accounted for changes we've already mentioned, as well as many, many more. CH, to sound like a K, would be simplified to C alone, except before E, I, or Y. So character would be spelled with no H, but chemist, architect, and monarchy would retain the H.
Why?
That's like in the Italian fashion.
Oh, man. But the thing is the answer to why is just gradualism. Like, because they could,
they were like, we can't do them all at the same time. People will get confused.
And that is exactly how people felt. But more rules included silent S's like that in island being removed. SQUE, like in burlesque or masquerade, would be reduced to SK.
Okay, yeah.
YOU in young or your would just become YU. And OUGH would be changed to its phonetic equivalent in almost any case. So although would become that earlier THO, or cough would become COF. Some SED past tenses, as in distressed or expressed, would simplify to ST. And again, the unnecessary UE would be sliced off of words like analog or decalogue.
Like, were they all talking about the 10 Commandments a lot, that like this word was coming up?
So Decalogue, I mentioned earlier, has been around since the 1300s. And I guess it's just been used in scholarly conversations just to refer to the 10 Commandments. Like, because that's what people had to do at one point. I don't know.
Do we think that before the film, they were always called the Decalogue? And then the film came out and they're like, oh, 10 Commandments. Now that's something that people recognize, you know?
Yeah, it was a branding thing.
It was a branding thing.
Yeah.
They started selling cups with its name on it. And
Decalogue's just not catching on. We need more syllables. Cups. Moses with both of them on his side, but like in that that overly action strongman pose, like with two guns.
They just sell Stretch Armstrong figurines like that.
Thou shalt not kill. Carnegie's advocacy was so strong, Kyle, that he would eventually gain the ear of who else but rich people's favorite guy, the President of the United States of America. Mm-hmm. This president in particular, Kyle?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt!
Wow.
So taken up with the idea was Teddy Roosevelt that in the same year the list was released, he issued a letter to the government printing office which required all executive office documents to follow its spelling standards for the words listed. And like falling up steps to an airplane or missing the door handle of a garbage truck, this move invited a weirdly enormous amount of negative publicity for the president. Critics remarked that Roosevelt merely took delight in supporting a losing cause, referring to perhaps more than just simplified spelling. Political cartoons were made of Roosevelt, which depicted him focusing on spelling when much larger issues of national concern lurked about. The Washington Times snarkily remarked that had President Roosevelt declared war against Germany, he could not have caused much more agitation. The New York Times reported that President Roosevelt was the laughingstock of literary London. And then there was this rip snorter where the Baltimore Sun asked if they should spell Roosevelt's name Rusevelt or, quote, get down to the fact and spell it Budinsky.
So funny. Got him.
Got him. Oh, you know he was livid when he read that.
Not bully. Not bully.
Somberly.
Decidedly.
Not bully. Roosevelt eventually gave a very, very soft apology to the government printer, where he stated that the list was merely an experiment and that, quote, if some spellings do not ultimately meet with popular approval, they will be dropped. And being the man that he was, he made sure to spell dropped with a PT ending.
Yeah.
So devastating was the pushback that other branches of the government eventually made their positions known. In 1906, the same year, a lawyer utilizing the order was chastised by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for spelling through THRU and had to assure it would not happen again. And finally, on December 12th, 1906, The same year the list was made, the House would vote 142 to 25 to withhold funding for the printing of any government document that deviated from conventional spelling.
That's big.
One opponent in the Congress, who I suspect was Rand Paul's great-grandfather, stated...
Just grandfather, I think.
Yeah. If the president can change 300 words, he can change the spelling of 300,000. Thus, Roosevelt finally admitted defeat and abandoned his advocacy on the governmental level for simplified spelling. Mark Twain would later joke, "Simplified spelling brought about sunspots, the San Francisco earthquake, and the recent business depression, which we never would have had if spelling had just been left alone."
He's a funny guy.
He's just a funny guy.
They should name a humor award after him.
So true. Unfortunately, just like Roosevelt, Carnegie too would eventually have to accept a perhaps inevitable fate. In 1915, Carnegie wrote a letter to the president of the board, a publishing magnate, Henry Holt, stating, "A more useless body of men never came into association, judging from the effects they produce. I think I have been patient long enough. I have much better use for $20,000 a year."
But I can tell you this, a more useless body of men have come into existence since.
Yep, they're going to be inaugurated January 20th, 2025. Although dissatisfied, Carnegie continued to fund the board until his death in 1919. And lacking the funds to continue on, the board would dissolve. But that wouldn't prevent them from publishing their Handbook of Simplified Spelling in 1920, outlining the history, arguments, and rules for simplified spelling.
Fantastic.
Isn't that incredible?
Honestly, thinking about all of this, I've been on such a roller coaster of thought. Because there was at one point where I was like, you know what, it's not so bad. Like, let's just do it. And then part of me was like, no, this is what we know already. And it's like, the history is of where the word comes from. That's the point. And then I was like, nah, screw it. Let's just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, ride that wave, man.
It's the OPT that got me. Like, dropped PT? Yes. It just fits.
Yes, there are some of them that I'm just like, come on. Interestingly, Benjamin Franklin, the colleague that he presented the alphabet to, had like a lot of things to say about it. He was just like, dog, like, no one's going to be able to do this. And besides that, like, you're getting rid of the etymology. No one's going to know where these words come from. And Benjamin Franklin's like, how do you think we got here? What do you these aren't the words we were using back then. These are different. We know the etymology of these words.
Yeah.
He's just great, that guy.
Is this where we get like the slept?
I don't necessarily know if that's where we get that, because like there are also conjugations in German words that are also like schleppt, schleffen, like that are different in those contexts. So like it's probably really word by word. Like we won't know. Sure. And it's also possible that we get these inspired endings like EPT from the Germanic roots of English. You know what I mean? Like we probably come to some sort of middle ground there. But hey, let's get to our denouement. From the Norman Conquest to Andrew Carnegie, English spelling remains the subject of constant criticism, controversy, and confusion to people the world over. And of course, the story doesn't end in 1920. In fact, in 1908, a concurrent simplified spelling society with far less celebrity and government support was founded in the UK and still exists today as the English Spelling Society. With some victories here and there, the society takes an open approach to the idea of reform, allowing for open forums and submissions for alternative systems. They even have a mascot in the form of B-Man, who shows up to every Scripps Spelling Bee to protest the difficulty of English spelling and its impact on literacy rates.
Every Scripps Spelling Bee?
How many do they have? They have one a year, right? The national...
They do one every night.
Yeah, the Scripps National Spelling Bee.
Yeah, sure. Are we going to get them on the podcast?
Maybe. But as we can see, on nearly any page of any book you pick up, the fight rages on. In a tale of prescriptivism versus descriptivism, tradition versus progress, sudden change versus gradual reform, spoken word versus written, even the USA versus Europe, we can see all the faults and triumphs of the human spirit at play. And I think I should say that while we may be convinced that the true fervor of the movement reached its end in 1920 with the death of its most public advocate, the dissolution of its most potent organization, the loss of financial support, the failure of a president to embolden it, and all in the span of little more than a decade, we can't lose sight of where the movement is strongest, and that is in each and every one of us. We might look at the failure to secure change on a national level as the final say as to whether or not that change moves forward. But inevitably, the force for that change will persist through us all. Every day, we see new words enter into the new popular lexicon that change our perspective of spelling, pronunciation, English standards, linguistics, or even society as a whole. And we don't do that with boards or associations or presidents or lexicographers. We do that with each other. We communicate and we improve that communication, and the style of that communication follows. So, this chump, I implore you all to recognize the power you have in small acts of courage, whether it is letting someone merge, or whatever Emily said, or just alphabet spelled with an F. Those small acts might just one day become the longest episode of someone's podcast. And wouldn't that be something? Now, before we wrap up, because honestly, we're already here, let's do a game.
Yeah.
Obviously, the name of this game is called The First and Last Chumps National Spelling Bee.
That's so good.
Absolutely.
What did you think was going to be the case? That's right, it's time for a spelling bee with a twist. The publishing of the Handbook of Simplified Spelling in 1920 added an even more extensive list of simplified spellings to its repertoire. So today, I'm going to present you each with 6 words from the handbook to spell according to their rules. We won't do it script style. Instead, you will go back and forth, and I'll let you know with each word whether or not you got it right or wrong, and we'll tally up the score at the end.
Okay.
All right? Emily, could you remind me what your small act toward world peace was?
It was very vague.
Oh, it was. It was like a really general idea of like standing up for the little guy. Perhaps not as small of an act as merging. Because I forgot, you get to go first or choose and let Kyle go first.
No, I'll go first.
Okay. Your first word is vindictive.
How did the simplified
How did they spell it?
Congress want to
Simply.
spell it?
How did they spell it simply?
It feels pretty simple already, aside from that silent E. So I'll say VINDIKTIV.
Wrong.
Oh, we're doing it chump style. We're doing script style.
We're doing it chump style, baby. No K. I also would have presumed that it was a K, but they did not. I don't think they do that at any point. I think the C maintains a K sound.
Sure. They just drop the E.
Yeah, just the E. It gets dropped. Yeah. Kyle, your word is troubled.
TRUBBLED.
Wrong. Although I like your approach. Did you add an E as well?
TRUBBLED.
Yeah, that E definitely wouldn't be there. It's basically the same way you would spell troubled, but without the E. So TROUBLD. Again, I don't know why they would keep the O.
The O is the confusing part.
That's the confusing part. All right, O for O. Emily, your next word is purchased.
Oh, okay. PERCHASD.
Wrong. They keep the U, so it is PURCHAST. Purchased.
Purchased.
Kyle, same line of thought here. Practiced.
PRACTI. Fudge. PRACTIST.
You got it. First win of the game.
Practiced. But that's like a person who practice is a practice.
That's
Yeah,
what would
like a
backform from
shortening
that.
of practitioner, like a practiced
Yeah.
is a practitioner. Yeah.
Somebody who's practical with their hands.
Practical. Practical? Emily, next word.
Yeah.
Eager.
EGER.
Wrong. Spelled the same way you would spell it today.
They don't change it at all.
Nope.
Screw you, Seth.
They're changed the original spelling of R-E.
R-E.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, Kyle. Next up. Metamorphosis.
Oh, screw you. I'm trying to remember how metamorphosis is spelled
Absolutely.
normally.
I think I tried to put one in here for both of you
Osis?
that might be a little difficult just on the regular level.
So I'm going to guess that they just changed the PH to an F. Metamorphosis.
You got it, Kyle. All right, Emily.
Every time Seth does a game, Kyle wins.
But you know what,
You
Emily?
gotta do more games.
At the end of the day, guess what? You knew more about dictionaries than Kyle. And you get to take that home with you.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But Kyle's going to win.
It's the only thing that's not redundant about me.
Kyle.
All right, Emily, your word is phenomenon.
Do.
Yes.
That's my answer.
Yep. Correct. That is how they simplified it.
Phenomenon.
Phenomenon.
Wow. I mean, F.
Hell yeah, dog.
Yeah, we're with you there.
Oh, Emily's going to reveal each letter. It's going to get ready for this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. FENOMENON.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. Absolutely. All right, Kyle.
Mhm.
Your word is bizarre.
Which bizarre?
Like the quality of being.
BIZARR. Bizarre.
Wrong. Just one R.
Just one R.
BIZAR. Emily.
Yeah.
Gymnasium.
Where do you cut from that?
I mean, it's definitely got to be James Nasium.
We really must simplify this language.
I think it's JIMNA. Would they go that far? Yeah, why not? ZEUM.
Wrong.
Yeah, I took big swings
You
there.
did take big swings, but good swings, just not right. They kept the G, so GIMNA, and they didn't go ZSIUM, gymnasium.
Just the Y.
Just the Y.
Just the Y. That's the biggest problem in gymnasium.
Definitely not the G, and definitely not the Z sound for an S.
Yeah.
Kyle, franchise.
Franchise? I don't even know. Okay. There's one of two things that they did. Either they dropped the E and kept it, or they changed it to a Z and kept the E. I feel like there's no way they did both.
I'm with you.
So I'm going to say, I think they just dropped the E. I think they spelled franchise FRANCHIS.
Oh, wrong. I should be a judge at the Scripps National Spelling Bee.
You got to get a little bell. That's what they do.
Tired.
You're too nice.
I should be mean though.
No, I'm just saying you're too nice right now.
No, so they actually spell it, Kyle, with the Z and the E.
That was the
They
other
did
option.
Z. See, I was.
You were that close. Emily, your word is tycoon.
Ooh. Are we just getting rid of the double O there? TYCUN.
Wrong!
No. Yeah.
They just changed the Y for an I. TICOON, which is interesting because that's weird looking.
That would complicate things further for me. I would be very tempted to say
Tycoon?
Tycoon.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm with you, Emily. Mark Twain's an idiot. All right, Kyle, your last one. You win no matter what. Your word is pandemonium.
What could you possibly change in this word?
You think they just changed the own? They put like a W in there?
They put a W
Pandemonium.
in there. Pandemonium. Oh. Now it's like, I don't know, did they change the E to an A to make it sound pandemonium?
Oh.
Pandemonium?
Pandemonium.
Like weird.
Oh, pandemonium was when we got the pandas back from China this past summer.
Yes.
They
were doing a lot of monium there. Wait, what was your joke? You were doing onium. I was doing a panda sex joke.
Oh, I thought monium was that decagram of drug you take in the morning.
Oh, that also is.
Oh, we're on the same page.
I take it with a panda. I don't think it's spelled any different. I think it's Pandemonium, pandemonium.
Wow. Kyle got it.
Oh.
So throughout the handbook, they also include some spellings that they didn't change. Like, there's just some words that are not changed, I guess, just to be like, see?
We're not completely crazy.
Changing everything.
This word that you use all the time is going to stay the same.
So, listen, I guess that's what the Chump brought this year. Decalog, and simplified spelling. Cheery Chump, you guys. What do you think?
Oh, cheery Chump.
Aw. I think I now know who to blame. I now know who's on my enemies list.
Absolutely.
And who is going to be on my presidential cabinet when I'm elected. Mark Twain.
There you go. Okay, he's dead.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Terrible start. Terrible too, right there. Just from the standard of aliveness.
You're not doing so great.
Yeah, I started this just intending to talk about Teddy Roosevelt and the simplified spelling board, and then I was like, oh, this has been going on since literally modern English. Period.
I almost got into this conversation, I think, in ABCdery. Like, there was a whole section where I wanted to talk about it, but that was so long ago.
So long ago. And I feel like this will be a nice linchpin for folks. I feel like there's a lot here when you guys go off and do other episodes that you can sort of be like, do you remember this thing? And like, because there's a lot, I don't know, like definitely when it comes to spellings and some words and how they evolve, it's just like, it's always in the ether with these conversations.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you should start doing
absolutely
is that at the end of the year, as a year-end recap, you should edit together all of the episodes that we did for that year and as one episode, but put all of the facts in chronological order.
Oh my God. I love it. Well,
so that it's like
Emily loves it. Like, so Emily will be working on the pre-production element of getting all the outlines in order.
Yeah, I'll get all the timestamps for you.
Absolutely. And Kyle, on that end of year bit, I'm gonna say a few things to our listeners. Listen.
Oh, please.
It's the holiday season. And we here at Butter No Parsnips want to show our immense gratitude for our patrons on Patreon who help to make this show a reality. So we really want to thank Heather B.,
Monica of Tot Music,
Lori M.,
Pensive Primate,
Day D.,
Rob R.,
Jesse M.,
Stephen I.,
Chris B.,
Crocust,
Diane B.,
Lane S.,
and Sarah D. Thank you all so much. For $5 or more a month, these patrons receive a monthly Patreon exclusive Codcast. That's the fish podcast we do.
Fish version.
The fish version?
It's got 3 fish hosts.
Called Buttered Parsnips, where we really let loose and talk about things ranging from some of the stuff I mentioned in this episode, like the founder of Esperanto, all the way to deciding which is better between the stage or film version of the Newsies. We'll also be posting a more chump-spirited episode there this month. Subscribers also get semi-regular Afterthoughts posts where Kyle and Emily are given free rein to expound a little more on some of the research they did on their episodes, as well as general updates, outtakes, and other miscellany. And hey, it's Chump, and thus, as is, I assume, a part of the Chump tradition, it's the season of giving. So if you know someone who might be interested in this sort of stuff and want to support the show, consider gifting them a subscription at patreon.com/butternoparsnips.
Gimlets!
Gimlets! Oh, Kyle!
Gimlets!
Kyle.
There's a delay.
Yeah, there's a delay. Listen, no episode next week. This was one hell of a way to go out for the new year, and we want to wish you all...
And it might take you until next week to finish watching.
I hope it does.
This one.
I hope it does. Enjoy it. We're taking off next week. We've been working like dogs, and we could all use a little time for the holidays, i.e. Chump. So I made this one extra long. All right? Just to help you get through it all.
And remember, you can watch us on YouTube at Butter No Parsnips, and you can find us, Butter No Parsnips, on other social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Butter No Parsnips Podcast, and on TikTok at Butter No Parsnips. And if you liked today's episode, consider giving us a 5-star rating or review wherever you heard us.
Thanks so much to all of you. You help us make what we make.
And with that, I've been Seth Glixman.
I've been Emily Moyers.
And I've been Kyle Imperator, and this has been Butter No Parsnips.
Cheery Chump, everybody!
Cheery Chump!
Cheery
Gimlets!
Gimlets! And Happy New Year! Happy New Year!
Happy Hogmanay!
Oh, Happy Hogmanay! Happy Hogmanay, one and all.
Happy Hogmanay!
That
Happy
works.
Hogmanay! Wow, that
Happy
does work!
Hogmanay.
Butter No Parsnips is produced by Kyle Imperator, Emily Moyers, and myself, Seth Glixman. The main and accompanying themes were composed by Kyle Imperator.